All right, I'm joined by Katelyn Tocci in San Jose, Costa Rica, and Alex Sear. Where are you now, Alex? Alex is in a hotel room. It's mysterious. We know he's been traveling. You're somewhere in Tennessee, correct?
Yeah, I was going to give you a hint and say Music City, though I think that's kind of too much of an obvious hint. So I'm in
Yeah.
Nashville. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah, I'm in a resort. I'm in a resort that's kind of like a Disney World resort. I'm in a room with two queen beds by
You're painting
myself.
the picture. We can
By
see it, but not everyone can see it.
by myself. I'm on day 3 here, running in the mornings. I'm at a conference. We're doing a conference throughout the day. It's an Orange Theory conference, which is a gym, which has to do with my other life covering health and fitness. Anyway, it's been funny to merge, like think of running and then also health and fitness on one side. Two very different worlds. Anyway, this is for another podcast. But yeah, I'm actually like 6 hours removed from checking out the Country Music Hall of Fame, which was kind of like just a Taylor Swift blowout. I think there's been some renovations in the last couple of years.
All right, of course.
Mm.
Everything has been Swiftied or Tay-ified.
Yeah. Also, passed through with a fine toothed Luke Combs. There's a lot of Luke Combs stuff in the Country Hall of Fame, which like kind of surprised me. I know he's a massive star. I personally really like his music, but he's seen as a big deal here already, which is cool because he's like just a couple years older than me, and he's like very much earlier mid career. So, and then obviously your Johnny Cash's, your Tim McGraw, but yeah, there's a lot of young flavor in this Hall of Fame. It's not like sports where you pretty much have to like be done your career to get any type of recognition. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, country music is sort of a bridge too far for me. I'm like, I get lost very quickly. I know Johnny Cash, of course. But yeah, Luke Combs, I have no idea who that is. I have to be honest.
Yeah,
Oh,
you know
no
what?
way.
I don't either. And I was a huge country music. I mean, I still love country music. A huge fan when I was in college. I went to a ton of concerts like Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, Brad Paisley, Kenny Chesney. I went to a ton. But yeah, no, I can like rattle them off because I really do. For being a Northeast girl, I do like a lot of country music.
My goodness.
And no Luke Combs.
No,
Wow.
but I'm gonna look them up because I
You
still love country
wrecked my
music.
whole world
Oh
when you
wow, here we go.
Whoa,
came.
I
You hit me
love
like
it.
a hurricane. You're
Oh,
welcome, listeners.
there you
Oh,
go. Yes.
I think I know. Okay.
Me
Yeah,
too.
Look up Hurricane, get the real version.
Yep.
gotcha. So you're in Nashville, you're doing the junket thing. I've been there before. Caitlin's been there recently as well at like a weird resort where you're with a whole bunch of like fitness influencer, health lifestyle people, not necessarily any runners. And you're almost
Hmm.
like the dark secret is that you get up before everyone else and run 10 miles and then
Yep.
do weird workouts all day.
Yep.
Guys, I felt like an animal today. So my workout was a threshold workout, like a hard 3 by 8 minute threshold. I'm in half marathon prep, double back, Uber home, shower, and then go to the gym to do a treadmill interval workout.
Oh, no.
No, no.
A double.
Oh
So
no.
and they asked me, they said, tell me what your easy running pace is, and then we're going to go faster from there. So I lied and I said my easy run pace is a lot slower than that is because I didn't want to go and full on do a
Good
double
plan.
workout morning.
Smart play. Smart
Yep.
Mm.
play. And you don't need a flex. You don't need to show off how quick you can run in front of all of these influencers. It already is going to look good anyway, you know. Okay, so we're going to do today we're going to cover a whole bunch of things, but our main topic, fittingly for Alex, who's just destroyed himself by running two hard sessions in one day, is we're going to talk about recovery. And we're specifically going to talk about post-race recovery because it is marathon season. It means that soon, for many of us, myself included, it's going to be marathon recovery season or post-marathon season. And recovery is one of those sort of mystifying subjects that we thought we should unpack. Looked at some studies, a slew of studies, all the current
Hmm.
research, the sort of like generally accepted knowledge. on recovery and what actually makes sense and what doesn't, and what each of us do. And of course, some of the horrifying mistakes we've made in the past.
Oh yeah.
Yikes. So, all the compression socks, and ice baths. But we're also going to pick Alex's brain about the 5 and the 10K because Alex, you've just gone through a couple of different races where you've had to kind of recover on the fly and then bounce back and race again, which is something you can do in a season for a 5 or a 10K. A little trickier for a half, and then obviously I think we can get into this later, but obviously the big no-no is the marathon. I think that and beyond that, ultras as well. You need more
Yeah.
recovery. And Alex and I will defer to Katelyn for the ultra. Before we get into that, I think we should take a minute, guys, to do a little victory lap here and to share with our listeners and viewers on YouTube the exciting news. If you're following what we do and maybe get our newsletter, visit the site on a regular basis, you're going to notice a huge difference at marathonhandbook.com, which is that we've totally, I mean, like facelift is not
It's a
the
facelift.
a body
Exactly.
lift. We've done
That's what,
Frankenstein surgery to
yeah.
the website. We've completely changed the website. I mean, we've rebuilt it from scratch. Oh man, this has been a long gestating project. I was actually thinking back about this one, and I remember having a Zoom call with the design firm that we contracted, Hampton, which are based in Scotland. Excellent design firm. They came up with the design for the site, and when we had our initial sort of first look at design options, I had to deke out of the tube in London in April during the London Marathon weekend. And by Piccadilly Circus, I went into a Starbucks to get good Wi-Fi and then watched this presentation. So that's a while ago, right? We're going back. I think this project has been ongoing for months and months and months. Lots of hard work from our entire team went into this. Pretty proud of it. I think it looks really good. The
It
whole
does.
concept was to like create a site that you'd want to go to, you'd want to spend time on, you want to explore, and that's also like really kind of clear and self-evident, and kind of has our what we categorize as sort of like our big pillars, right? So we do sort of news and culture, uh, training and advice, coaching, sort of advice, that pillar, and then also of course gear, which Alex uh, is headlining that one with our YouTube channel. So it's pretty video forward. It's very clear and very visual, and obviously designed for mobile first. And I think we should all be really proud of it. We put a lot of work into it. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go to marathonhandbook.com and take a look at our site. We're all kind of beside ourselves that it's up and running. And I think there's still some bells and whistles to be added, which will be fun to see. Like I know we're gonna get more into having little video shorts on the site on the homepage that will be reactive and you can play directly on the site. And right now, if you want to, you can listen to any of our podcasts directly off the site on your phone, on your laptop, whatever. So that's an exciting new project that we've just sort of resolved, and pretty proud of it. All right. Next thing we got to talk about, Alex. Got to talk very quickly about this new shoe that you experienced. You experienced the shoe in New York. You did a like kind of first impressions review of it while you were in New York City. We've talked about it briefly on the pod, but you slid me a pair a few days ago. I've been running in this ridiculous boat, Brooks Glycerin Max. This thing is gigantic. I feel silly wearing it, kind of, but I gotta say, man, kind of enjoy running in it. And it doesn't feel sloppy. It doesn't feel overblown. It doesn't feel over engineered. And it's oh so plush. Have you been running in it since? Because I've been running in it every day since you handed me a pair.
I've done a couple more runs in it. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I was looking over our video
Mhm.
of the Glycerin Max, and I felt that I was a little bit harsh on the shoe. I felt that the tone was kind of harsh. And the reason I think that is I think we're in a place now where we need to have a specific thought of what we want out of a shoe before trying it and reviewing it, because shoes have become so specialized now. So I put the shoe on thinking that it would be like one of those super trainers, like workout shoes with super foam and a carbon plate that are heavy but also super powerful. So it's fine that they're heavy. The thing with this one, obviously, we went over this in the videos, that it doesn't have any carbon, so it doesn't have all that much bounce. But I've decided that's not what it is. It's not a workout shoe. It's like an easy running shoe that's just like big, that saves the legs for the next day, that actually like feels kind of comfortable running in, and that doesn't feel unstable on the foot like other super trainers, like other super tall super trainers. This one is, I think, like 45 millimeters of stack height, just from memory, which is super tall off the ground. And so I've come to appreciate it. Like I kind of like it as an easy running shoe that's just, yeah, that's plush. It's comfortable.
It's
Plush is
plush.
like, plush
Comfy, comfy.
is the taboo word now because we've used it so much. But no, it's like a cool, easy running shoe. Feels solid. I feel like the more you wear it, the more you grow accustomed to it. I'm not surprised that you didn't mind it, Michael. Like I kind of think it's a catch-all. I haven't heard of someone hating it. I've heard of people being confused by it, but yeah, now the next thing for me is I want to see how it evolves, like how durable it is and how long it lasts for me before losing its bounce. And I mean, who knows? It's so big that that might actually play in its favor. That maybe
Yeah,
it's good for 800 plus K.
I I started kind of writing a long-term review in my mind as I was sort of taking these for a spin for the very first time. And I will say, so I ran 20K in them in my first run,
Mm.
which is pretty substantial for just like, it was like peak week of mileage before running this damned marathon in a couple of weeks. And I didn't know what to expect. And I actually planned in my mind, like, okay, like if these shoes feel too weird, I'm just going to turn around and come back home after like a mile or two. And kept going with them. And I was like, okay. And the biggest compliment I can pay to them is that like I kind of stopped noticing the stack height, the softness, any sort of like sense of energy return. They just kind of felt like a really nice, comfortable everyday trainer. And even after taking a couple of hard turns, hard cuts, I didn't notice that the stack height was prohibitive in any way. Didn't feel unstable, as you say. And the thing I was very impressed by is for all that cushioning and that big fat stack height, I didn't feel like it needed some sort of like torsion plate or whatever to give it stability. It actually felt pretty good. And I am somebody who typically likes to feel the ground,
Hmm.
like a firmer shoe. I usually like wear the shit out of my shoes. This is sort of my ongoing problem is I wear like shoes into the ground. I kind of get like attached to them and just run in them until like they're way cooked. So in this case, it was like, wow, this is a really soft, plush shoe. And I stopped thinking about the shoe so much until I ran out 10K, turned around, came back. And then at about 13 or so K, I was like, I'm going to like dial it up a little bit here and see how they respond. And I will say this. Yeah, they're not a workout shoe, but if you're doing a long run, great idea for a shoe for a long run. And if you're doing a long run with some marathon pace, I think you can get the shoe up to marathon pace without it really getting in your way in any way. Like it's
Okay.
not cumbersome.
Mhm.
It's not how I have to say, it's not how I remember. Like I remember like the glycerin and the ghost to a degree, kind of feeling a little cumbersome when you try to inject any level of pace. And so I think the shoe's like it's quite light too for its gigantic size, right? So really interested to see how it wears. I agree with you, Alex. Like we'll do a long-term review. I think one of the reasons why I came begging for a tester shoe is I think we're going to start getting into doing some of these long-term reviews and sort of following up with these shoes after 100, 200 miles and 300 miles, 500 miles, see if like, they're still standing. Even if we're just doing like little YouTube shorts and reels on them, I am very curious to see how the midsole survives, say 500K.
Yeah.
Because it could go either way. I have no idea. So we'll see.
Mhm.
We'll see.
Mhm.
We will report back on our various channels with this
Keep
shoe.
us posted.
Yeah.
Keep us posted because I've always loved the glycerin, even though you're saying that they seem quite different. So I'll be curious to know because I want to give them a try.
They've got that Brooks magic though. You just put
Yeah.
them on, you're like, this just feels like a hug around my foot.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm
I was
looking for.
gonna say the hug of a grandfather.
Oh.
I don't know if that's comforting or creepy. Now I'm gonna think about my dead grandfather hugging me every single time I'm running in the Brooks Glycerin Max.
Mm.
Okay, let's pivot from that one. Katelyn, we're
Yes.
last thing before we get into recovery is sort of like the preamble to recovery.
Okay.
So, Katelyn, this is a scheduling note. We're going to be recording our Chicago preview pod early next week, and
Hmm.
then we'll run it at a regularly scheduled Thursday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. It will appear in your feed. But we're recording it early, and then we're also going to record the following week's podcast as well, back to back, because Katelyn is going to California to run
Yes.
to run a race.
I'm taking off. I'm taking
Wow.
off. Yes, I'm going to Kodiak. Kodiak is a UTMB race, like a trail festival race where they have a bunch of different distances. So I'm going to take on the 50K. And I think I mentioned in one of our podcasts way back when that I was focusing a little bit more on the 50Ks because I've always been kind of a 100K kind of girl. I like the really long races, but I wanted to kind of work on speed. And I know you guys made fun of me when I said 50K to work on speed. But anyway, 50K is a lot different than 100. So I wanted to kind of test the waters and do some faster trail running. So I'm super excited about it. And one of the most exciting things about the race is that we're a group of about over 25 from our running club here in Costa Rica who were all
Wow.
traveling together. Yeah, it's a
25.
very big group. Yeah, 25 of us are going, which is why I said it's going to be a crazy week and a half because we're, traveling with that many people all together is going to be insane. So we're going to the race and most everyone who's going to the race, our athletes, they're doing like first timers. It's either their first 50K, their first 100K, and we have two people running their first 100 well, not their first, one running a first 100 miler, another one running their second 100 miler. And so we've got a lot of really big finishes to wait for. So I hope to be able to get back from my 50K and just like be at that finish line to see all of the athletes cross over because that's like such an amazing feeling to see your hard-working athletes cross the finish line, especially when they're doing a new distance. So it's going to be a super exciting weekend. And that's on October 11th. The 100-miler racers start on the 10th, the day before on Friday, and the rest of us run on Saturday. So it's going to be a super fun weekend. It's the area in Big Bear Lake. They say it's absolutely gorgeous. I guess ski resorts in the winter and just gorgeous trails in the spring, summer, and fall. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great, great weekend.
I mean, it looks gorgeous. I did a little scan of the race website, and the term mountain charm is featured prominently, and it looks just like that, not far from LA. So
Yep.
I mean, it looks like a killer event. I mean, it looks really awesome. You're basically lots of mountain alpiney kind of running
Yep.
like up along the top of the tree line, and looks like there's a wee bit of elevation that you're going to be doing. And
Yeah, it's going to be a little tricky because it's going to be elevation for us. I think it's about 2,000 something meters, like 5,000 feet. 5,000 feet of vertical gain. No, at an altitude of 8,000 feet. That's what it was.
oh,
And so, yeah, it's not as high as I was. I mean, sometimes we do some races here. There are probably a little bit higher, but we don't live at altitude. So it's not like, so we're going to feel it just as we do when we go up to the mountains here in Costa Rica and run. We feel the altitude. I'm sure we're going to feel it there. So it's just going to be one of the many obstacles of trail running that we're going to face other than the elevation gain and all that other fun stuff on the course.
So this is the perfect segue into our main topic of the day, which is so Katelyn's going to sprint through a
Sprint.
K- 50K, 50K,
Yeah.
50K.
50K. Yep.
He's going to sprint through a 50K like Alex runs a 1500 on the track.
Yeah, sure.
And then because you've got your coaching duties to take care of immediately afterwards, let's make sure like we'll put a pin on this and we'll go through this as we talk about post-race recovery. But I'm curious to hear like what your like mental checklist will be when you cross the finish line of a 50K. And then you got to hang around the race finishing area to see your athletes and also I imagine like not just the finishing area, but like probably some crewing involved because if someone's doing 100 miles, they're going to be out there for quite a bit longer than your 50K, of course. So
Right.
that's like something where you're like you have to remind yourself like, oh, okay, I got to do X, Y, and Z before I
Yep.
can sort of put Coach Katelyn on hat on and
Yeah.
get back out there. Okay, so
No, yeah, you're right. Okay. All right. I
yeah,
can go through my
this is the
my
challenge.
checklist there. Yeah, and actually it's really funny the way that you're putting it because it is going to be tricky because it's not just like I'm racing and I can go focus on my own stuff and be calm about it because I'm going to want to get back out there as soon as I can. So, I think for me if I had a checklist or if I had like my best tips for what to do right after an ultra is I would say once you cross the finish line, just keep like walking around a little bit because I feel like a lot of people finish a long ultra or they finish a marathon or any sort of high intensity race if it's shorter. And you'll want to just kind of like sit down, like stop and sit down. And I will never forget my first road race. I'm talking first couple of years of college, I wasn't even a runner. I was a soccer player my entire life, never a runner. I decided to run this race. Um, Perhaps didn't prepare as well as I should have. Finished the race, perhaps. I'm talking over 20 years ago. Uh, Stopped short after finishing a race, literally stopped short, my legs just buckled and gave out from under me. And
Ooh,
thank goodness I had my dad waiting for me and a friend. And I just kind of like grabbed onto both of their shoulders and my legs just completely collapsed under me. So I would say rule number one, do not stop short at the end of a race and just stand around or sit down or something, walk around a little bit. So maybe you'll have people that you're meeting at the finish line. Maybe they'll be waiting for you if they are, or if you don't, just walk around a little bit. Keep moving. Go get your medal, go get something to drink. But kind of keep walking around. That's the first thing I would do, and then I might do just like a tiny, tiny bit of very gentle stretching, just because I feel as though, but very, very light stretching, just a tiny bit, and probably only for a few minutes, just to I kind of feel like that helps me a little bit with the recovery in the long run, but I won't be putting that much time into it. I'll rather look into that more a little bit later on. The most important thing that I need to do after a race and after really any sort of intense training session or any session at all is change out of my wet clothes. Like that to me is like on the top of my list. It's almost the most important thing that I do because I am, okay, guys, oversharing. I sweat an incredible amount. I am a very heavy sweater when I'm running. Doesn't even need to be super hot out. My body just, that's the way I don't know. That's the way it works.
you're an evolved human. That's all.
Okay.
It's good.
All right. I would like to think of it like that, Alex. Thank you. So I need to get out of, first of all, because I hate the feeling of being sweaty when I'm done running. So I got to get out of those clothes. And if I don't, I am literally so soaked that I will just start shivering. Like I'll just start getting super cold and uncomfortable if I don't get out of the clothes. So I don't know if this is a surprising tip to anyone or a surprising part of this, or if everyone does it, but I will literally make that my priority to find either a bathroom there or somewhere close. Hopefully they have showers. If not, my Airbnb is literally 5 minutes down the road. So I'll probably get there, shower, change, and get back so I can be dry and I can be comfortable because I have a really, really long afternoon and evening hanging out at that finish line. So I'm going to want to be comfortable. And within that same window, trying to get the fourth thing in, I'll want to get something in my system, like some hydration and some food. So probably whatever's going to be, usually at ultras, they actually have food at the finish line as well. And not just kind of, I'm sure I'd a lot of races as well, kind of like a snack at the end. But I'll usually pack like a recovery drink, and it won't just be protein. It will be one of those recovery mixes that will also have a lot of carbs. We'll probably get into that later with nutrition. So that's pretty much it. Walk around, tiny bit of stretching. Once I've, cooled down for a second, get out of those wet clothes as fast as possible and have something to eat and drink.
Alex, I got two questions for you.
Shoot.
Oh, just one question first. We'll go one at a time here. Don't want to overwhelm here.
Good journalistic practice, one at a time.
Exactly. Exactly. Have you ever collapsed at a finish line?
Yeah, I have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one. Of course you have.
Every Sunday, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Do you want the story? It was 2015. It was a college race. Actually, it was the national championship. Sorry, 2016 national championship. And I was 11th in the country until 2 kilometers to go. And then the wheels fell off. I think I got passed by like 20 people. I somewhat held it together to finish. Like I didn't chep the guy my way through. If you don't know what I'm talking about, YouTube, that stuff.
Oof, that was
YouTube,
brutal.
that shit. I made it to the end, but I gave it everything, and my legs just buckled under me. Again, my parents were there. So was my dad. Thank God for dads. They're around. We collapsed.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. Shout out to dads out there. No, my parents were there watching the race, and they were just like there at the finish line. They gave me food. That's it. Food, drink. After 30 minutes, I was okay. I was walking around. I made the after party. It was fine. But yeah, it happens. What's
Have
your
you,
second
Michael?
question?
Oh, or second question, or if Michael has collapsed at a finish line. I want to know that too.
Oh, yeah. Pause.
I have only trying to think here. I have only outright collapsed at a finish line in a 1500-meter on the track. That's the only time I've ever just been like so cooked at the very end of a race that I was done. Like I don't want to kind of glamorize the whole like um you know running yourself until you barf at the finish line or collapse or the crawl to the finish line. Uh, and in that 1500 meters, I was just like, I was so destroyed at the end. Everyone, I mean, that's a classic thing in 1500 meters. The last lap is all like guts. And then, especially if you didn't do it correctly. And then you just like, everyone's just sort of keeling over at the finish line. But you recover so quickly from a 15, it doesn't really matter. But never in a marathon. I've crossed the finish line in a marathon. I don't feel great sometimes, but Katelyn, good tip. Just like sort of keep moving. Like
Yeah.
I think we're sort of like burying the lead here or getting a little bit unstructured, but like I think just sort of in the immediate like pro tips and like the immediate aftermath of a road race or I guess an ultra as well is like maybe just keep moving a little bit, keep moving
Yep.
forward. Actually, the very first time I ran the Boston Marathon, the guy I was running with gave me a great advice. We came through the finishing area. I felt pretty good. I mean, my legs were pretty smashed, but like just energy wise, I felt okay. I wasn't going to keel over. But that's a race where you see a lot of people just like really, really in tough shape in the finishing chute. And they have all of these wheelchairs and they're just like kind of waiting for you. It's like unlike any other even the other majors, they don't do this, but like in Boston, I guess they're just used to so many of their runners just getting completely trashed from all the hills, and being completely spent that they've got all this medical staff and all these wheelchairs, and they're just sort of waiting to pounce on you. And they're like, oh, got another one that went down, and they wheel over and they kind of scoop you up, and they're like, they see you wobbling, and they're like, you must be falling up. Come sit in the wheelchair. And he's like, you don't want to go in the wheelchair, man. You don't want to go in the wheelchair. They got to take you in the tent. They take you in the tent. They got to check you out. You're stuck in there for like an hour at least. You don't want to go in the wheelchair. He's like, so if you're fine, he's like, just keep moving. Don't sit down. If you sit down, because there's this whole sort of finishing shoot in a lot of the majors where there's this sort of like purgatory between the finishing area where they shoo you away from because they don't want to bottleneck, and then there's like refreshments and snacks. And then
Mhm.
there's usually an area after that where you can kind of meet and greet with friends and family. And like, say, for example, in Chicago, it's in the park in Millennium Park. So it's like a huge grassy area. You can go hang out there. No one's going to bother you there. But in that purgatory, man, you do not want to get caught Don't show signs of weakness because they will scoop you up, especially in Boston. So, pro tip for you, Katelyn:
Okay.
keep moving. Just keep
I will
moving.
keep moving. So they don't
Get
say, oh,
your
another
get
one
your
bites the
race
dust.
bag. Yeah, get your race bag. Get changed right away. Uh,
Okay. Thank
okay,
you.
so let's go through this. Let's like create a little bit of structure here. We can talk about 5K, 10K, half marathon, and also ultras as well, right? And I think there's a little bit of a difference between each one of them.
Mhm.
We talked quite a bit already about immediate post-run recovery, but I'm about to blow your mind, guys. I'm going to ask you
Do
guys
it.
an existential question. What does it mean to be recovered?
What
What
does
does
it
it
mean
mean?
to be
What does that
recovered?
mean? What does recovered mean? What does it mean?
Trick
Well,
question. Go, Alex.
do you mean physically or mentally?
I don't I don't know.
Where
I'm just asking the question. It's
it's
something that I realized when I was reading a lot of literature on this in the last 24 hours preparing for this pod. It kind of came up at one point in an article I was reading. It was like the definition of being recovered is unclear. So it's hard for a scientist to define what being recovered is.
Mhm.
I guess physiologically it's get back to baseline, I guess, right?
Mhm.
which kind of means like letting yourself become untrained. Like the majority of your
Yeah.
training cycle, you're not training fully recovered. You're training with junk in the legs purposely.
Yeah.
So
Right.
even your taper, right? Like you're relatively recovered compared to your workouts from previous weeks when you get to race day, but you're not at baseline. You're deeply trained at that point. You're altered. You get to the start line, you're altered. So yeah, what is recovered? Is that like after taking your time off after your race, whether that's 1 week, 2 weeks, physically and mentally itching to get back to it?
Yeah, I think that that's the bare minimum definition, I would say.
Hmm.
And it's unclear what being recovered is. And I think part of our mandate here is to get through all these talking points that we've created in our show notes here. And hopefully when we get to the other end of this, we'll all have like a communal sense of kind of what being recovered is and how to get there. So
Hmm.
that's my starting point here. 5K, 10K. Let's talk about that very briefly because I think it's 5K and 10K and even half marathon, very different than the marathon and perhaps different than the ultra as well. Alex, you just run fives, a 5 and a 10 recently. Uh, what's your like? Okay, you crossed the finish line. I'm somebody who has always done a little recovery jog afterwards. I don't know why. It just seems to make my legs feel better.
Like a cool down.
Yeah, a little cool down run,
Hmm.
like a little
Mhm.
20, 30 minutes or say like
20, 30 minutes?
at least sometimes I'll run for an hour after a 10K. I mean, like if I'm doing like a sort of a split 10K long run, if it's just a training sort of being absorbed into a marathon training block, yeah, I'll run like for I guess like, 60 minutes afterwards very easily. But yeah.
Okay.
Like what's your approach, Alex?
The day of, yes, a cool down as well. And that's very common. I've rarely met someone who finishes a race and doesn't cool down.
Just
I
like
think
I'm done.
like done. I've seen this
Mic
like at the
drop.
end of seasons, but I think you should do cool down.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it a different place because I've been thinking about this before the podcast. Have either of you, or maybe even listeners, ever felt the need to like celebrate a little bit after a race? I do every single time. You've just done something hard, right? Something that you've looked forward to, that you've trained for, you've prepared for. And that's a bit of a means for celebration. Most people I know will enjoy like maybe a post race beer or like a
Okay.
dessert or
Sure.
something
Or
like
Hmm.
that,
both
right?
at the
Right.
Both.
same time.
Or both, or they'll choose to not do the cool down,
Oh,
or they'll choose to not really think about nutrition that day because I've kind of earned it. This is actually a psychological thing. It's called licensing, right? When you do something really hard, you allow yourself to slack or cheat in other parts of your life because you say, well, I've done this, so I've earned this.
Hmm.
I've been thinking about this season. So for context, I'm 2 races in. I have 2 races to go. Each of my races have 2 weeks in between them. After a race, I have the urge to kind of get off the horse of being an athlete day in, day out, doing the right things. And I've gained an appreciation for fighting against that urge to let go too much. The way
Okay.
that looks for me is if I want to have a beer after the race, I will. If I want to have a dessert or a little treat, I will. But I will also do three things. I've put it in a bit of an acronym. I call it MED, like medicine, recovery, whatever.
Okay.
Move, eat, drink.
Yeah.
Don't, okay?
Hmm.
Move, eat, drink. Don't spend the rest of the day sitting on the couch, reveling in your glory. Okay.
Sitting at a bar in Chicago drinking half a dozen pints of beer.
No,
Example,
and if you do, at least go for a walk during
Just
between the
walk around the
pints, whatever.
bar.
Move around.
take your pint of beer out into the streets. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's one. Two is eat. Okay. And that's not eat anything. It's eat stuff. You know, if you're hungry, eat. Like maybe you're getting your protein from a big fat chicken burger. That's fine. But make
Ooh,
sure you
yum.
eat enough. Don't just forget to eat. Don't just have a dessert and go to sleep. Eat enough. Eat
Yep.
good things. Eat junk food if you want. Just eat enough. Three, drink. Have a beer. Also have a lot of water. Have a Gatorade, whatever.
Hmm.
So that's what it's not a no treats, all business. It's treats and business. Do both. And then
Let's
you
do it
wake up the
all.
next day and you feel okay, right? Like you can keep going. And this is 5K, 10K, right? Because you're in the unique situation where you're probably doing 3 or 4 or 5 races that you care about that season, right? So you don't like you can't afford to get off your plan for 3 or 4 days just because you sat on the couch after the race, you wake up the next day and your hamstrings are too tight to do the run. Like your season keeps going. So to me, that's important.
And
MED.
I would say even if it's the end of your season, if it's the ultimate race, you're closing things up, you're running in your case, it's going to be a half marathon in October, right? In my case, it's going to be Chicago in a couple of weeks. So, and Katelyn is Kodiak sort of capping things for you, the 50K?
Yep. Yep,
Right.
exactly. It's closing off the year.
I think it's still paramount to follow what you're suggesting, Alex. And you know what, Alex? This is exciting. This is nice because this segues perfectly into my next note here, which is
Oh.
it's med, your was that an initialism, an acronym?
Med. You can also go EDM if you're into club music.
Let's go med.
Let's go med. I'll go for med.
Yeah. Yeah. So your med approach aligns perfectly with the only valid science on recovery. So check this out. First things first. I kind of scoured the various studies that are out there, and we can define what you need to do to recover after a big goal race is you're going to be dealing with muscle soreness, like overall physical fatigue, which is sort of like a general sensation, uh, inflammation, which can actually be measured, and muscle damage as well, also can be
Hmm.
measured. And so, which aligns with muscle soreness, but is a little bit of a different thing, right? It's like the actual damage to your muscles that needs to be physically repaired by your body.
Hmm.
And then, of course, psychological fatigue as well. So that's what we're dealing with here. There's been over 2,000 studies on exercise related recovery uh, that have been cataloged. And there was a meta-analysis of all those studies done a few years back. And it was sort of like boiled down to like about 100 studies that were actually worth their salt, like legitimate, large sample size, well executed studies. And those 100 studies looked at all the different sort of approaches to recovery, like recovery techniques, massage, everything, the full gamut. And the only proven means of actually physically recovering is sleep and refueling. That's
Hmm.
it. The massage, the cold plunge, hot plunge, the cryotherapy, the needling, the cupping, the um, ice baths, the whatever, all probably just placebo. The only
Hmm.
things that actually help with recovery is sleeping and eating. That's it.
Hmm.
Eating and drinking, fueling,
Eating and drinking, exactly. Yep.
replenishing
Right.
your stores. That's it.
Mhm.
Right.
So
So maybe we call it meds with an S.
Oh, we can add sleep. Love it.
nice, nice.
Perfect, Alex. Yeah, that's
Love that
great.
one.
Yep.
Meds,
Meds.
TM.
Take
Yeah,
your meds. Mm.
I like it. Take your meds. This is good. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. I was really surprised by that. I was kind of a little bit shocked by that because I thought there'd be like at least some evidence that some of these techniques that are used by like elite athletes around the world that come in and out of fashion, long-standing techniques like massage, right? Uh,
Right.
there's just not a whole lot of conclusive evidence that any of those things do anything positive for recovery beyond just the old placebo effect, which is a real thing. Placebo
Yep.
effects actually, if you think it works for you, it actually does have a measurable positive impact on you. So,
Mm. Yeah. And I would say like if you are a cold plunge person or a massage person, you feel that it helps, like I don't know, why not keep doing it, but
yes.
know what the building blocks are. Like know what's even more important, or at least what the studies say is even more important. Move, eat, drink, refuel, and sleep well. Like that's the basal stuff. Whatever you want to do on top of it, cool.
Yeah. So obviously, we just said that sleeping and eating play a huge role. And alcohol affects sleep. So we can just make a note of that. I mean, that's sort of like crushing to me because there's nothing better than having an ice cold beer after finishing a marathon. In fact, Chicago is one of those marathons where you finish the marathon. It's sponsored by Goose Island, the beer company that's located in Chicago. They're one of the sponsors. You finish the race, you cross the finish line, and the very first thing before even water,
The medal.
before the medal, before they're like, "Are you okay?" They're like, "Would you like to have a beer?" So
Awesome.
which it sounds like a great idea the day before the race because you're just like, yes, that would be excellent. A nice thirst quenching ice cold beer. But it really depends on where your stomach's at when you finish the
That's
marathon.
true
Mm.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for
Uh,
most of us, it's hard, especially after a hard effort, like a shorter race or even a marathon, and you're not, it's really hard for me to finish something like that and want to eat. And I think that that's part of it as well. And like what we're pushing so much about eating, drinking, sleeping, I think that even if you feel it's really important, even if you don't feel like it, try to find something, anything that you'll be able to start refueling with because your stomach's probably going to be all turned around and everything seems unappetizing and you just don't want. I get a stomach ache after I do a really hard effort. So I know what it's like. And it's just find anything that is semi appetizing and just try to start refueling as soon as you can, even if you don't want to. I mean, just, with something.
yeah, I think that like preloading that in, like you just said, Alex, that kind of meds rule where you're just like,
Yep.
I have to remember to do these things as soon as I'm done the race will probably help you from like uh if you're going to react physiologically negatively towards food and drink because like you're just your body's shutting down. Like you just put it through especially with the marathon, you go put it through a very stressful experience. And it's not just merely muscle fatigue, it's like neuroskeletal. It's your nervous system is all out of whack. You've totally messed up your like kind of hormone balance is all thrown off after extreme exercise like a marathon. Even a half marathon can do that as well. So like
Mm-hmm.
in order to get back to baseline, you need to start kind of like you need to start fueling, you need to start rehydrating because your body is also like seeking out like you just spent through most of your glycogen stores, right? And that's one of the very first things your body needs to sort of replenish to kind of calm everything down is you need to start replenishing your glycogen stores. So might seem a little bit weird. You might be thinking to yourself, well, I need to eat protein because I need to like get
That's what
muscle,
happens.
you need to get muscle regeneration going. Yes, that is
Yep.
true, but you also need to be taking in some simple carbs as well,
Yep.
and some fluid. What do you guys eat immediately after a race? Do you just, I mean, I have to admit, I just kind of grab whatever's there in the finishing.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost always food in a road race, but like, do you guys have anything in particular that you grab?
No, I don't. I'm
Yeah.
kind of the same way. I'll go. with the only variation that I'll check the ingredients because I'm allergic to nuts, and a lot of these bars have nuts in them. So
Oh, yeah.
you don't want to go straight from anaerobic shock to anaphylactic shock. So I'm careful.
Dude,
Yeah,
Oh
but
boy.
end up in the
banana,
medical tent for a completely unrelated reason.
yeah, then we'd definitely need the wheelchair. Bananas are good. Like there's a reason there are bananas everywhere, not only because like after each race they're at every table, not only because they're cheap, but bananas have potassium, right? That's good for muscle and to prevent muscle cramping. That's a good thing. I like bananas. I like bars, like Cliff bars or Lara bars. They're just like they have some carbs. They're high in protein. They're tasty. They're kind of easy to get down. Depends on the flavor. The peanut butter Cliff bars I can't really get down. Pretty much all the other ones.
Yeah, I hear you on that one.
Mm.
Yeah, I'd say pretty much the same. Before I was probably a little stricter and I would try to like bring a recovery drink with me and have everything ready, but it's kind of a pain because you've got to, keep it somewhere and find it. And sometimes it's just not feasible. So I also like to, at this point, just go through the finish line and just make sure that I'm grabbing some stuff because it's not. I used to be, yeah, much stricter, but whatever's there, whatever's appetizing. I guess, like I just mentioned, like whatever I can think, okay, I can get this down, then I'll just take whatever I can at the finish line.
And I'll like fill up a water bottle, and even if if you're going for a few alcoholic refreshments after your big goal race is finished, just bring a water bottle with you and kind of like tell yourself like I just need to get through this bottle or two of these
Hmm.
bottles and I've checked that box off.
Yep.
Yeah. So short-term recovery strategies. I'm curious to hear, Alex, your point of view on particularly with 5 and 10Ks, especially if you're rolling through fives and 10Ks mid-season. It's not your be all end all race. Do you take off a day after your race? Do you push your workout before or after the race? Like, do you modify what you're doing, let's say in the week around a race on either side, because you're going to be putting your body through a more sort of intense all out effort?
Yeah, well, this year what I've been doing is the modification comes more before the race, and this is because I haven't hit my goal race so far. So the real difference only comes in the 2 days before the race. So 2 days before, I usually have a day off. Like that's my one day off of the week. And I've been taking one day off per week, race or not, this season, and it seems to have been working. The So that's 2 days before as a day off. The day before the race is usually a shakeout run, like a run that's shorter in distance with like a few minutes, not quite at race pace, but at a little bit of a picked up pace. Not everyone likes that. Some people like to keep
Hmm.
it super chill on the day before. I kind of like it. Something my coach implemented this year, and again, it's just worked. It kind of fires me up because at that point you probably haven't run fast in a couple days, and it just reminds your muscles of the patterns that they're going to have to take the next day. I think if you get to a point where like those minutes are making you super tired, then you're defeating the purpose. Like you don't want to get to a point where you're tired. You just want to go to a place where you kind of know what it feels like to run close to race pace. That's before. Afterwards, so far in the two races that I've done, we haven't altered anything, and I think that's a product of setting priorities, right? We talked about this in a previous podcast. It's like you can't be tapering all the time if you have 3 or 4 races
Yeah.
in a
Right.
3 month block. So we've chosen to train through things. So the day after a race, I'll have a regular easy run, which for me could be, 60 minutes or 70 minutes.
Hmm.
And the day after that, we get back into workouts. Now, I'll admit that in the past, I've taken longer after a race, and we're trying this new approach of like one day of easy back into workouts. I don't know what it's going to be after the next race. We go week by week with my coach, which side note, something that's kind of nice that I like because then we can adjust based on how I'm feeling. But yeah, lately it's been that. It's been one easy day and then back into a workout.
Okay, so let's move up sort of short-term recovery strategies here we're rolling into. Let's move up in distances here, talking about half marathon, certainly marathon. And I'm also curious to hear if there's anything different with the ultra distances. Obviously, ultra means It's like saying the track and meaning 100 meters or 10,000 meters. It's like the ultra, 50K, 200 miles, whatever. Yeah. I don't think we'll be talking too much about 200 mile
No.
recovery would be just like, you just take as long as you want, you know?
Take a
Uh,
year.
yeah, yeah. You may never want to run again. Yeah. So half marathon, marathon, Katelyn, half marathon, like as a coach, when you're working with athletes of all different stripes, let's say it's a goal race. Let's say the big goal this season is you're capping it off with a half marathon in October. What do you recommend in terms of like ending the season, taking some time off, recovering, and then perhaps thinking about the future?
Okay, well, I also think that it's going to have a little bit to do with, yeah, the intensity. If you're going to run a half marathon and you're going to give it your all, let's talk about someone who is like they're like you're saying, the end race of the season and they're really going to push. So it's going to be a really tough effort. And if it is the end of the season and we don't have anything next, I guess I would really take advantage of that. So I would say, I would say a few days without running. If you're probably super banged up if you gave it your all. And get back into cross training, move, as Alex is saying, it's not just at the end of the race, but it's really important during that entire first week to move anyway, even after the race. So you want to make sure that even though you're resting and maybe not running for a few days, like for a marathon, I would say between like 3 to 7 days, no running, but it's really going to depend on the person. Um, and then kind of slowly get back into some running, maybe at the end of the week and the second week after half marathon, and do some cross training. It's also going to depend how you end up. Like if you're truly beat up, and if you're not, marathon a little bit longer. For a marathon, I would have like in the second week to start with just a few very easy runs. So maybe like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes. Of course, if you're advanced, you're probably going to want to do a little bit more, be able to get back into it faster. But I would say for that first week, really take a few days off from running. And that is so hard for me to say because I literally want to go running on day two. I'm like, no, I'm ready. And I'm not ready. My muscles are killing me. I'm super banged up, especially if I ran a half marathon. Like I'm in complete like muscle breakdown. Everything hurts. So obviously taking those first few days, I think that's how I would take the week, and then maybe some cross training as the rest of that week goes. What about you, Michael, for the half?
I have a very strict rule, which is no running for a week after a
No
marathon.
matter what, half or a
No,
marathon.
just a marathon.
Oh, a marathon. Okay.
Half
Yeah.
marathon, I would say, yeah, like three,
Right? Yeah.
4, 5 days. If it's the end of the season and that's your capper for the end of the season, and you're going after a big PR and you're pushing really hard and it's right on
Right.
the edge of what you can do, which, a half marathon feels a lot more like a 10K than it does a marathon when you're running really hard. So
Right.
you can kind of run at that like not aerobic edge, but kind of like closer to your lactate threshold, depending on
Right.
your talent, a bit, your talent as a runner, and your fitness level, your age, and all these sorts of factors. But you can kind of run much closer to that lactate threshold. It's much less aerobic than, say, a marathon, for example, by quite a bit. And a lot of the damage in a marathon comes from just like time on feet, right? And that last 10K of the marathon just becomes very detrimental to your body. Half marathon, you know, you're running hard.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, three days, a couple of days. Like if it's the end of your season, take the week. Just take the week. I
Exactly.
have
Yeah.
I have I have like a philosophical sort of vantage point on this, which is if it's the end of your season and that's your goal race, whether you succeeded or not, if you can't take 7 days off of running, you've got a problem. You've got a problem that's much
Hmm.
deeper than
Yeah.
uh a running. It's like you got a life problem. Because if you can't let go of
Totally.
running for 7 days, yikes. Like you got to look into yourself in the mirror and ask yourself some tough questions. I mean,
Okay.
like we're getting real
I was
here.
My name is Katelyn Tocci and I'm addicted to running.
That's right. You
This
gotta
is
like,
because I would definitely have that problem a
yeah.
whole week,
Sorry, I don't mean to
Michael.
be like, I'm not taking shots at you, Caitlin.
I'm
Like,
teasing. I'm teasing.
sorry.
No, but you're absolutely right. You
Yeah,
should
you
be
gotta be
able
able to
to
take a
do
week
that.
off.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you're serious
absolutely.
about running and you love running and it's something you're passionate about and it's deeper than just like a little exploratory hobby, you're really deep into running and you can't take a week off, like that's kind of messed up. You need to be able to take a week off. It's just a week. Take the week off. Be a professional. Elite athletes will take a week off. They all take a week off. You talk any elite athlete, any top level, talk to Mr. Kipchoge. That MF takes a week off. I can guarantee. I can guarantee you. He probably takes 2 weeks off. You know. Um, and then I would say after that 1 week off, and listen, you can fill your days with other forms of light aerobic activity, like go
Hmm.
for a walk. Think
Right.
about the glory of the marathon you just ran, or contemplate how you're going to do things better next time. Take 30, 45 minutes, go for a walk afterwards. I mean, you don't have to in the first week. You can just do whatever you want, but don't run. Just let your body and your mind heal. Um, and then week
And
two, we want to get into week two. We ready to move?
yeah, yeah, we could. I was just gonna mention that if you absolutely need to do things,
Yes.
just to mention a couple more of those things other than a walk, like if you swim, swimming's
Yeah.
great. Swimming's
Yes.
amazing. Like not only is it zero impact because you're floating, so it's incredible for you. I think it really, I am a terrible swimmer, but I have gone in and like messed around with it a little bit after some races, and I feel like it just really loosens up my muscles and it relaxes me when I don't feel like I'm drowning. And so I think like swimming can be really great for you if some of you cycle, or you want to be, a really light cycling session on the bike, or, some elliptical, any very low impact or no impact sports would be the best way to kind of fill out that week. I think if you absolutely need to do something and you do want to keep moving, as we've mentioned a couple times. Okay, week two.
Week two, I think then just turns into unstructured running. You
Yep.
don't have to run every day. Don't run for more than like 45 minutes. Don't get greedy. Just like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, little shakeout runs. Very easy,
Yep.
very just like your easiest easy pace. You can even me, like I take the whole marathon thing very seriously. Even Mr. Sear, like after you smash a half marathon, week two, your recovery, like just go for a 30-minute run and like 10 minutes into the run, if you're just like, man, I'm feeling kind of bagged, just walk for 5 minutes. Like
Right.
whatever, who cares?
I've
Like
done it.
there's no
Definitely.
running police out there just being like, aha, gotcha. Oh, I guess it's Strava. I guess Strava's the problem,
It's
right?
Strava now. Mhm.
God,
Alex definitely pauses his
goddamn
watch if he walks.
Strava. You know what
Yeah,
it is?
yeah, yeah. Pause the watch. They can
I
never
knew it.
tell.
I knew it.
Pause the
I knew it.
watch,
We'll never know.
pause the watch. You can pause the rings now on the
Oh,
Mhm.
Apple Watch. You can now pause your rings so you don't wreck your streak if you need to take a day off. Like ultimate cheat. But in that case, pause your rings. Don't post your run to Strava. I dare you. I challenge you to just go run for 30 minutes and walk half of it and let your watch run. Don't wear your watch. Just like take it easy. Just like be kind to yourself for a week.
yep.
Yeah. And then like I kind of do that for a week, and then week three is kind of like a hybrid of trying to kind of get back to running not every day, but 5 times a week, and then just like 30 to 40. And then week four is a little bit more concentrated. And then after about a month, I do a little check-in and I'm like, okay, how do I feel about things? How do I feel
Hmm.
about running? How motivated am I or not? How does my body feel? And then if everything seems like it's back to baseline, I'm like, okay, I'll start running in a structured way again. And maybe I'll introduce a very light fartlek workout midweek, very
Hmm.
light, like one of these like 1 minute on, 1 minute off type things. Like I'll do like 10 times 1 minute on, 1 minute off. And just at whatever 1 minute on, 1 minute off is, it's probably not very fast. So that's my month after the marathon. That's how I do things.
Michael, I think that it is actually pretty similar to the ultras because when I'm thinking about it, maybe the marathon actually needs a little bit more recovery in a sense. And it I think it has to do a lot with the intensity. It depends on what kind of ultra you are, but I know that when I've run 100K races or 100-mile races, the intensity that I'm running that race at is extremely different than when I'm running a road marathon. And I feel as though, as crazy as it may sound, I feel that I've been more beaten up after a road marathon because I'm just pushing and pounding as hard as I possibly can for that time. And when you're running an ultra marathon, maybe 100 very long races, you're kind of, even though it's a lot of time on your feet, your intensity level, if you're not the super pros and able to push the whole time, your intensity level is going to be lower. And so usually with most of my trail athletes, we take about like at that 3 week mark, we're usually okay to get back into structured training. Of course, it's going to depend. It's on a case by case basis. But I would say that I usually start feeling better after about 3 weeks. I can try to start getting back into structured stuff. I do go through those where I think I'm recovered, and then the following week I'm not recovered. Like week 2, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm ready, and I'm not. And then week 3, I'm like, I'm not ready. So I think it's also really listening to your body and seeing how you're doing. But the ultras as well, I'm feeling like about 3 to 4 weeks, your body has fully, in quotation marks, recovered. If you feel like you're better, if all of the physiological markers are better, which we're probably not going to all go out and get tests to see, CPKs and all that kind of stuff, which we can mention if we want. We sometimes, I had some athletes do that if they feel really fatigued after a race. But about 3 to 4 weeks before starting some structured stuff is there. So we're like lined up right on the
Okay,
money.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, before we move on from this, the science sort of says that particularly with a marathon, your body does not recover until like 7 or 8 days after the marathon. It's not even close to be in the 48 hours after, not even close. 72,
Yeah.
not even close. It's like 7, 8 days. Your body is starting to sort of like kind of reset or recalibrate physiologically. And that's not to there's actually been not very much research done on the psychological impacts of weirdo endurance sports and how you recover from those psychologically. And it's a whole like field of sports psychology that's quite fascinating. That's just like not really been tapped into yet, it seems. So, but I would remind myself that if I were a listener out there and I'd be like itching to kind of get like the marathon, maybe your marathon didn't go well and like the wheels came off in the last half, in the second half, and you feel like, I'm not that banged up and it was a flat course and maybe I just want to like kind of retool and get into another one. It's like it's taking at least a week for your body to even basically recover, never mind like psychologically the impact of a season of training. And you're not recovering, as Alex said off the top, you're not recovering from one run from a race. You're recovering from 4 months of training in most
Yep.
cases, right? So
Yep.
a culmination of that. Um, to that, quickly, guys, just recovery challenges and mistakes. Like mistakes maybe you've made in the past that you want to share with others that we can learn from, or just some common challenges you've seen or encountered either with your training partners, yourself, people you've coached, that sort of thing. Mr. Sear.
Yeah, my biggest recovery mistake came in 2018, and it had to do with an injury. Oftentimes, we finish a season and something hurts, right? Because at some point, you pick up a little niggle, something is kind of sore, and you say, okay, I can ride this out for a few weeks. And oftentimes, you should, right? It's like you can stretch your season, you can make it to the goal race, and after that, you take care of your injury. My issue and my mistake was that I assumed that time off would heal the injury. So I stretched my season. I had a goal time that I wanted to hit. It was a track season. I stretched it a bit too far and I finished and I had some issues all through my left kinetic chain. And what I told myself was, okay, great. Well, I have 2 weeks off. And so I'm just going to chill, take it as easy as I can, not do anything. It was summer. I was at my parents' house. I sat on the couch for much of it, sat on patios. And 2 weeks passed and I came back and the injury wasn't gone. If anything, it felt worse to move around because the strength, the muscles that I had developed to kind of counterbalance the problem were gone. And so things just hurt more. And I tried to get back into running and it was tough. So the mistake was, don't just assume that time off will heal your injury. Time off probably will help, but you should supplement that with either physiotherapy or strength and weight training. Find out what the problem is. Some problems just need time off. Other problems need fixing. And if you only take time off, they're still going to be there when you come back. So I think recovery sometimes is easily mistaken for, or time off is easily mistaken for just do nothing. And in 2 weeks, everything will be fine. That's not always the case. So if there's something wrong with you, take that time off, that recovery time, to find out what it is.
Alex, I could not agree with you more. And I just think it's super important to talk about this because that's what happens with a lot of runners, and not just runners, but sometimes the people that they go see to ask about their injuries. And they say, well, just stop running for a month. I see it all the time. When my runner said, oh, well, I went to this person and I went to that person and they told me just to stop running. And most of the time, at least the cases that I have, of course, everything's going to depend on the injury or the issue. But what I love about the physical therapist that I see is that every time I've had some sort of an issue, he works me through it while doing strengthening exercises, while doing all of the sorts of recovery means that I need to do to be able to get better without stopping. And that's like a very progressive and great way of healing now, is that it's not just like take a break. The idea of healing is getting to the root of the problem, as you said, and fixing the problem from the ground up. So if that, usually, I think a ton of the time, it has a lot to do with strengthening, or it's a mobility issue, or it's, a lot of these details are things that we need to look at. And so I just want to say that I think that that is like one of the most important things that that we really need to be aware of, and not just think if I take time off, whatever it is, it's going to work itself out.
I mean, that was the number one note that I marked down as well.
Oh, awesome.
Like if you're carrying something, completely agree with you, Alex. In many cases, especially if they're repetitive stress related injuries, because running is just the same action thousands and thousands of times each time you run, you might carry something a little, like, for example, some tendonitis in your left foot. For example, I mean, just
Like your friend, Michael?
yeah,
Oh, your
like
friend.
a friend of mine who's been emailing me asking me about his tendonitis in his left foot. Yeah, and it's a thing where it's like, you know, figure it out when you're done. And that will save you a lot of literal and metaphorical pain in the future, especially if you want to run a lot of these races over a long period of time. And then the other thing I would say would be fight the urge to fight that insecurity, like that insecurity. I've already harped on it before, but like fight that urge to like just like shorten your recovery and jump right back in
Yep.
because you feel like running again. Just like you need to guard yourself from yourself in some of these instances. There's two types of runners out there fundamentally. Alex, you and I were talking about this the other day. There's two types of runners. There's the runner that needs to be nudged and challenged to do more and to stay on task. And then there's the runner who needs to actually be pulled in or reined in by their coach or by their training group or their friend, their running friend. Just be like, you don't have to do that much. You can actually do a little bit less, and that will actually be more for you. I'd say like the vast majority of runners do not need to be prodded or motivated. They're A-type, they're very driven people, they're goal oriented. It's how they found the sport in the first place. They actually need to be reined in a little bit. And if you're one of those people, which you probably are, if you're listening to a running podcast for the last hour about running, about race recovery, just pull yourself in, protect use your rational self to protect yourself from your emotional self in this context. Less is more, I would say, especially if it's the marathon or longer, for a month afterwards. Closing thoughts, guys. Any of you ever wear compression tights under a pair of pants on a flight?
No.
Socks.
Socks.
I've worn socks. I've worn compression socks before on a flight. It's not
You,
something I do religiously, but I've been there. Yeah.
you and the senior citizens. I like it. I like it.
Yes. Yeah. And
I've totally
also
done that too. Totally. Totally done it.
Also, like this is a pro tip for the flight. I've been doing this recently, especially in the last months. I've been flying a lot. When you can, get an aisle seat on the plane and walk during the
Yeah.
flight. Like get up
Oh,
every 30
totally.
minutes. It feels so much better when you land. It's not even comparable. Don't just like sit for 3 hours and feel like crap when you land. Anyway,
I must be like a flagged individual by TSA or something because like I like stand in the aisle, I hover by the bathrooms in the back, I chat with the flight attendants while they're like preparing the snacks, the carts, because like I just don't want to sit down on a plane because sitting is just absolute murder. So I have
I
a real
think
hard time with sitting.
I think they flag you because they see you at the airport and you're wearing a ball cap and reading some obscure book at the bar.
All right. That's right. That's right.
I've
Or
seen
they
you at the
notice,
airport.
or they notice that I'm a grown man wearing compression tights underneath my pants.
You wear high waters just so we can see the compression tights.
That's right. That's right. Most ridiculous recovery thing you've ever done, whether it was valid or not. Does anybody like have I have one kind of like it's not necessarily a bad approach to recovery, but it just I think about this and I'm like, I don't think I would do that again, but this is something that I did at one point. You guys go first though. I'm not going first.
I need you to go first. I gotta think.
I have
Ridiculous
one.
recovery. Okay, go, Alex.
I'll go. This is like coming back from an injury. So I guess it kind of qualifies as recovery. In college, our team lived in two houses, essentially, two to three houses. They were like these old, destroyed bungalows that had been passed down to the team for generations. And they probably had like the main floor was probably like 500 square feet, maybe. And when one of us would be coming back from injury, we'd do this thing called house runs. And I don't know who started it, but essentially we ran around the house, like literally ran around the house. So like you'd like hop in place around the kitchen, like dance around the kitchen table, and then run into the living room and do a lap of the living room and then run down the hallway and then run back and do this for however many minutes, maybe like 10. Some like one of our guys did an hour house run before. I think the idea was like running so slowly that you're not really doing enough of the running motion to recreate the injury. And it was kind of like a really soft comeback into running. Like if you could do a house run without pain, you were ready for like a road run without pain. So I don't know if this has any scientific backing.
But
Michael, you were looking at studies before the pod. Did you find anything on house runs?
I didn't see the run around your like university party house hopping on one foot and then you're good to go afterwards. I didn't see that in any of the studies. But that is something I'll incorporate that. I'll jog around my kitchen and my living room and if I feel pretty good I'll be ready to go again. That's good.
Mm.
I'll take a video after Kodiak of all of us running around the Airbnb and
I
see
like
how
it.
it goes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, I can't believe we've gone this deep into a recovery pod and not mention like walking down the stairs. Can you walk
Oh,
down like especially with the marathon? Can you walk down the stairs frontwards and not backwards? Can you take one step at a time, one stair at a time? If you can do that, like you're getting there. You're getting there. But that's going to be pretty tough the first couple of days. And sitting on the toilet and then getting back up again.
oh, that's yeah, murder. Like you just
The things that Alex gets to look forward to
you
in his
need the
marathon
rails,
future.
like
Yeah.
I
The
need
old the old
the
person rails. Yeah.
yes, please
Oof.
help me up.
Yeah. Maybe
Yikes.
like just get into a shower and you're just like, I need to sit down. I cannot stand. Yeah. 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 So I'll share my funny. I was thinking about recovery because we've gone down this rabbit hole and I was like, one thing stands out. Okay, this was going back maybe 10 or 12 years. I was a young whippersnapper. I was in my early to mid 30s. It was my birthday. So I'm born on the summer solstice, June 21st, the longest day of the year. I always like to do something kind of ridiculous that takes advantage of that long day. every year on my birthday. And this particular year, I was in Banff, Alberta, which is in the
Mhm.
Rocky Mountains in Canada. I was actually there for an event, for a race for the Banff Marathon, which I remember got canceled because there were grizzly bears
Oh boy.
fighting over mates on the highway where the marathon was supposed to be taking place on the day of the race. So they had to cancel the event. Or they had to like
Oh.
they canceled the marathon, sent the half marathon in a different direction. Anyhow, the day before the race was my birthday, and I'm staying at some like crummy hotel at the edge of town. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to run to the peak of a mountain and back today. I'm going to spend the whole day running in the mountains. So, and I was like, but I have told this race that I'm going to participate in their event the following day. I'm going to run either the half or the marathon. I hadn't
Oof.
decided yet. Thankfully, thanks to some mating grizzly bears for saving me from the marathon. I ran the half marathon the next day and I was like, okay, if I'm going to be running in the mountains for like, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours today, I'm going to have to do a little bit of like fast, like band-aid recovery here. So what am I going to do? I'm like, ice bath. Okay. So I went and I like filled the bathtub in the hotel room filled with ice. And then I was like, but after I'm done running all day, what am I going to want? I'm like, I'm going to want a couple of beers. So bought like gi giant bottles of Hefeweizen German beer, like the large like 1 liter bottles. I bought a couple of those, put them in the bathtub of ice. And I was like, by the time I get back at the end of the day, the ice will be sort of slushy, watery ice, but it'll be like absolutely like brutally cold. So I'll just do an ice bath. So I ran to the peak of Cascades, one of the mountains out there, ran along this ridge. Amazing day. I was out there all day long, came back at the end of the day. I was like running for like 7 hours or something like that. I was completely trashed. And I was like, I'm in so much trouble here because like I am here to like experience this event and write about it afterwards and run it. And my legs are cooked because I've been running for 7 hours in the mountains, including like a pretty fast descent to get back. So then I crawled into the ice bath. I cracked open each beer and I was like, I have to stay in this ice bath until both of these beers are finished. And it was brutal because I hate ice baths. And I sat in there until both beers were finished.
And you chugged them
I absolutely,
beer mile style.
there you go.
Wow.
That's the,
I wish I knew 32-year-old Michael. Is this like, did you have long hair at the time?
Ponytail.
no, no, no. Yeah, no, yeah, no, balding on the top, ponytail in the back. Um, no, no ponytail. I have had long hair, but that was a long time ago. So
There are so many photos Michael needs to provide.
ain't no photos. I ain't no long hair anymore. That's for damn sure. All right, guys. I think we've done it. I think we've fully recovered from the recovery podcast. If you've got any questions or thoughts or your own magical remedies, by all means, share them in the comments. You can share them in
Yeah.
comments now on Spotify. Not sure about Apple Podcasts, but of course, our YouTube video feed of the pod, which is doing really nicely. We're getting a lot of views there. So if you like staring at people while they talk, we post every single pod on YouTube. Comment there, ask us questions, uh, give us a suggestion on what super plush shoe I should be wearing next. Alex's next travel destination. All right, guys. Next week, Chicago Marathon preview.
Here we go.
Mhm.
Let's do this. Until then, thanks, guys.